My name is Marcus, I'm 37 years old, and I'll never forget what happened that day. My sister Rachel's wedding was supposed to be a happy time, but it turned into something terrible. The way my son Tommy screamed when his aunt grabbed him still gives me nightmares. I never thought my own family would do something so bad to us. All because of money I saved for my boy. Before I tell you what happened next, write in the comments where you're from. Click that like button and subscribe if you think families should be kind to each other. Not mean. Being a dad all by myself isn't easy, but I've done my best for 6 years now. After my wife Sarah left, I made a promise that Tommy would have everything he needed. I work at a factory during the day and drive a taxi at night. Slowly, I saved $15,000 for Tommy's future. It took so long to save that much money. I didn't buy new clothes for myself. I ate simple food. Every dollar went into a special account for my son. Tommy is my whole world. He's 8 years old and loves building things with blocks. He can sit for hours making castles and bridges. His teachers say he's very smart and helps other kids when they're sad. I wondered how I got so lucky to have such a wonderful boy. My younger sister Rachel and I didn't always get along well. When we were kids, our mom Karen always liked Rachel more than me. I had to be the grown-up one, but Rachel could do whatever she wanted. Mom never said I did anything good, but she always told everyone how great Rachel was. Rachel got a fancy job selling houses after school. She had lots of money for nice things. She wore expensive clothes, went on trips to beaches, and lived in a big apartment downtown. She went on dates with rich men. When she told everyone she was going to marry Stephen, a man who owned many stores, our mom was so happy. I really was happy for Rachel even though we had problems. I wanted her wedding to be nice and her marriage to be good. When she called to tell me she was getting married, I said congratulations and told her I would help however I could. The first time I noticed something was wrong was when Rachel started planning her wedding. What was supposed to be a simple party kept getting bigger and bigger. She changed where the wedding would be 3 times, and each place cost more money. The number of people coming grew from 50 to 200. Everything had to be perfect and special. Tommy and I went to buy clothes for the wedding. We found good ones at a regular store that didn't cost too much. Tommy was so excited about wearing a suit and being at his aunt's wedding. He looked in the mirror wearing a gray suit with a blue tie and smiled so big. "Dad, do you think Aunt Rachel will like my suit?" he asked with bright, happy eyes. "She's going to love it, buddy," I told him, hoping that was true. I tried to help Rachel even when she got bossy and demanding. When she called me late at night to complain about flowers or got upset about the wrong color tablecloths, I listened. I remembered being stressed before my own wedding, so I tried to be patient. One Saturday morning, about 4 weeks before the wedding, Rachel came to our apartment for breakfast. It was nice to spend time together like we used to. Tommy had made a special drawing for her with markers. It had colorful flowers and said he was excited for the wedding. Rachel looked like she really liked it. "This is so pretty, Tommy. You're really good at art," she said, giving my son a hug. "Maybe you could make name cards for the tables with drawings like this." Tommy's face lit up. "I can make them all. How many do you need?" Rachel laughed. "There are 200 people, kiddo. That's way too many for you to make. But maybe you could make special ones for the important table where I'll sit." Tommy nodded and was already thinking about what to draw. That moment made me think that maybe our family could be close again. Rachel and I talked about when we were kids while drinking coffee. Tommy drew pictures at the table. For a little while, it felt like we were really brother and sister again, helping each other without fighting. That good feeling didn't last long. 10 days before the wedding, my mom called me. Her voice sounded serious. "Marcus, we need to talk tomorrow. It's about the wedding. Can you meet us at Tony's restaurant at 5 o'clock? Tony's was an expensive place where rich people eat. Not somewhere I usually go. Is something wrong?" I asked, feeling worried. "We'll talk about it tomorrow," she said, then hung up. I had no idea that meeting would start the worst time of my life. Tony's restaurant was full of people in fancy clothes when Tommy and I walked in the next evening. I couldn't find anyone to watch Tommy, so he had to come with me. We found my mom and Rachel already sitting at a table with drinks. "Sorry I brought Tommy," I said as we sat down. "I couldn't find a babysitter today." My mom looked at Tommy like she wasn't happy he was there. "This is grown-up talk, Marcus." "I'll be quiet, Grandma," Tommy promised, taking out his coloring book and crayons. "I'll just color." Rachel called the waiter over. "Let's order food first, then we'll talk." We had a nice conversation while we ate our appetizers. Rachel talked about the last details for the wedding and Mom told stories about people who would be there. I relaxed a little, thinking maybe I was worried for no reason. After our main food came, everything changed. My mom put down her fork and looked right at me. "Marcus, we have a problem with the wedding, and we need your help." Rachel looked serious too. "The company making the food called yesterday. They can't do it anymore. They said they mixed up their calendar." "That's awful," I said, feeling bad for her. "Can you find another company this close to the wedding?" "We did find one," my mom said. "But they want all the money right away because it's so soon. $15,000. That exact number made my stomach feel sick. $15,000 was exactly how much I had saved for Tommy's future over 6 years of working hard. "We need you to pay for it," Rachel said straight out. "You can give us the money tomorrow." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You want me to give you $15,000 for your wedding food?" "It's just a loan," Mom said quickly. "Rachel and Stephen will give it back to you after their honeymoon trip." "Why can't Stephen help?" I asked. "Or you, Mom? Or Rachel with her good job?" Rachel looked annoyed. "Stephen already paid for the place where the wedding is. Mom paid for the flowers and music. I'm paying for everything else. We've all given a lot of money. But $15,000 is all I've saved for Tommy's future." I explained quietly so Tommy wouldn't hear. "That's money for him to go to college someday." Mom reached across the table and patted my hand like I was a little kid. "Marcus, family is most important. Rachel is only getting married once. Tommy won't need that money for many years." "But what if you don't give it back?" I asked, already knowing what she would say. Rachel looked hurt. "Of course we'll give it back, maybe in a year or so when we have more money." "This is your sister's special day," Mom added. "It's only money, Marcus. Tommy can borrow money for college like most kids if he has to." I saw that Tommy had stopped coloring and was watching us with worried eyes. He might not understand all the words, but he knew something was wrong. "I want to help, but I can't take all of Tommy's college money," I said firmly. "Maybe I could give you $1,000 to help, but not $15,000. Rachel's face got hard and mean. "It has to be all the money or nothing. The new food company won't take less." "Then I'm sorry, but I can't do it," I said. Mom's face turned cold and angry. "You've always been selfish, Marcus. Always thinking only about yourself. Taking care of my son's future isn't being selfish," I said back, trying to stay calm. Rachel stood up fast. "Fine, then don't come to the wedding. Neither of you." Mom made a surprised sound. "Rachel, wait. He'll change his mind." She looked at me. "Marcus, think about what you're doing. This is your sister's wedding. How will it look if you're not there?" I could see she was trying to trick me into feeling bad. "Are you more worried about how it looks or about our family actually caring about each other?" "You're being so dramatic," Amanda snapped. "If you really cared about family, you would help without making a big fuss." Tommy pulled on my sleeve. "Dad, what's happening?" "Nothing, son. Just grown-up stuff," I told him, even though my hands were shaking. "I need your answer right now," Rachel demanded. "Are you going to help your family or not?" Looking at their faces, I realized they really thought I would say yes. They thought I should say yes. They thought Tommy's future was less important than one day of celebrating. "My answer is no," I said firmly. "I won't take that money away from Tommy's future." Mom's face turned red with anger. "After everything we've done for you, you're so selfish and don't appreciate us." Rachel grabbed her purse and glared at me with angry eyes. "You can still come to the wedding if you change your mind, but only if you change your mind." They left without saying goodbye, leaving Tommy and me sitting at the table with food we hadn't finished. "Are we not going to Aunt Rachel's wedding anymore?" Tommy asked quietly as we drove home. "I don't know, buddy," I answered honestly. "Aunt Rachel and Grandma are mad at me right now." "Because of money?" "Kids understand more than we think." "Yes, because of money. Money that's for your future." "I don't need it," Tommy said. "If it would make Aunt Rachel happy." His kind words made me want to cry. "That's very nice of you, Tommy. But that money is important for your future. And Aunt Rachel should understand that." That night after Tommy went to bed, I called my friend Derek. He listened to everything without interrupting. "They're trying to control you, Marcus," he said finally. "Rachel can afford this. So can your mom and Stephen. This is them testing you to see if they can boss you around." "What should I do?" I asked. "Don't give in. Go to the wedding if you want to. Be nice, but don't give them that money." After we hung up, I made my choice. We would go to the wedding like we planned. We'd bring a gift and be happy for them. But I would not take Tommy's college money for food that Rachel could pay for herself. 8 days before the wedding, Rachel texted me saying we could still come. I thought that meant they had figured out the food problem without my money. I hoped the wedding day would help fix the problems between us. I was so wrong. The place where the wedding was happening was even more fancy than I thought it would be. It was an old mansion with big gardens. Workers were parking people's cars for them. Waiters were giving out fancy drinks as people arrived. Tommy's eyes got really big when he saw it all. "It looks like a palace from my storybooks, Dad," he said, smoothing down his gray suit. "I know, buddy. Remember to use your best manners today. This is a very fancy party." We were met at the door by my mom. She kissed my cheek but didn't really look at me and barely said hi to Tommy. "Rachel is getting dressed upstairs," she said. "The wedding starts in 1 hour. Find seats near the back, please." It hurt that she said that, but I stayed calm for Tommy's sake. "Let me get Tommy and say our goodbyes. Congratulations again, Rachel. It was a beautiful wedding." As I turned to leave, Rachel grabbed my arm hard. "You're not going anywhere. You already messed up my wedding plans once. You're staying until I say you can leave." "Rachel, let go," I said firmly, pulling my arm away. "You're making a scene." Some people nearby had already noticed we were fighting and were staring at us. "I'm making a scene?" Rachel's voice got louder. "You've been trying to ruin my wedding from the beginning. You've always been jealous of me." Stephen came back looking worried. "Rachel, what's wrong?" "He's trying to leave early," Rachel complained. "After everything, he can't even stay for the whole party." "It's getting late for my son," I explained to Stephen. "He's tired." "Of course," Stephen said, being reasonable. "Big events can be tiring for kids." "No." Rachel's face was twisted with anger. "They're staying." People were openly staring now. I started walking back to our table to get Tommy and leave as quietly as I could. Rachel followed, her white dress swishing angrily. "Don't you dare walk away from me on my wedding day." When I got to our table, Tommy looked up with a worried face. "Dad, is everything okay?" Before I could answer, Rachel's eyes locked on Tommy. Something in how she looked changed. The hot anger turned into cold, mean planning. I felt scared about what might happen. It all happened so fast. 1 second, Tommy was sitting at the table looking up at us with worried eyes. The next second, Rachel had lunged forward and grabbed Tommy's hair in her fist, yanking him out of his seat. "You care about him so much," Rachel screamed, dragging Tommy toward a small stage where the band was playing. "More than your own sister." Tommy's scream of pain cut through all the noise at the party like a knife. People gasped. Conversations stopped. The band stopped playing in the middle of a song. "Rachel, stop," I yelled, running after them. "Let him go." My mom stepped in front of me, blocking my way. "You brought this on yourself, Marcus. If you had just helped with the wedding like I asked." I couldn't believe what was happening. I pushed past my mom, trying to get to my son. But the crowd and tables slowed me down. Rachel had dragged Tommy all the way to the side of the stage. Tommy was crying and trying to get free, his small hands trying to pull Rachel's fingers out of his hair. "Please, Aunt Rachel, you're hurting me," Tommy cried. "Be quiet," Rachel hissed, and then she pushed Tommy hard against the wall next to the stage. The sound of my son's body hitting the wall made me feel sick. The whole room went completely quiet except for Tommy's crying. Hundreds of people watched in shock, but nobody moved to help. They were frozen because the scene was so awful. "This is your fault, Marcus." Rachel shouted across the room at me. "You could have stopped this from happening." I finally got through the crowd, running toward the stage. "Let him go right now, Rachel." My mom was still behind me saying, "Marcus, don't make this worse. Just promise to give her the money." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mom was using my son's pain to make me give in. Stephen stood near the main table, his face showing shock and confusion. He took a step forward, but seemed unsure what to do. Rachel, seeing me getting closer, did something unthinkable. With one last mean look at me, she shoved Tommy off the edge of the stage. It wasn't very high, maybe 3 feet, but Tommy fell in a bad way. His head hit the corner of a table before he fell to the floor. "Tommy!" I screamed, finally reaching him and dropping to my knees. Blood was coming from his forehead where it hit the table, and he was sobbing really hard. "Dad!" he whimpered, holding on to me. "It hurts so much." I pulled him into my arms, checking him all over for other injuries. The whole party hall stayed in shocked silence. The beautiful wedding was frozen in a terrible moment. Rachel stood on the edge of the stage, her wedding dress shining under the lights, her face twisted with rage. "Look what you made me do," she shouted. "You ruined my wedding, Marcus. You always ruin everything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I made you hurt a child. Your own nephew. He wouldn't be hurt if you had just given me the money," Rachel yelled, as if that made sense. Stephen had finally moved, walking up to his new wife looking horrified. "Rachel, what have you done?" My mom hurried over, but instead of checking on Tommy, she tried to make everything seem okay. "Everyone please, this is just family stuff. Please go back to your tables. Enjoy the music." Nobody moved. Nobody started talking again. The band members looked at each other, confused, with their instruments quiet in their hands. I looked at the cut on Tommy's forehead. It wasn't super deep, but blood kept coming out. Worse was the confused look in his eyes. "I feel dizzy, Dad," he whispered. Cold fear grabbed my heart. "He needs a doctor," I said loudly, looking around desperately. "Is there a doctor here?" Rachel was now arguing with Stephen, waving her arms around. "He's pretending to be hurt to get attention. Marcus has always been jealous of me." Karen stood next to them, trying to calm things down. "Rachel, honey, please calm down. This isn't helping." I was about to yell for help again when the main doors to the party hall opened with a loud bang. The room, already quiet, became completely still. Rachel, who had been yelling, stopped suddenly. Her face turned white. "No," she whispered. I turned to see who had made her so scared. A tall, elegant woman stood in the doorway, looking at everything with sharp, smart eyes. It was Margaret, Stephen's mother, who I had seen earlier. She's a judge. She had apparently left and come back to find the party in chaos. Rachel's hands started shaking. For the first time that evening, she looked afraid. Margaret looked around the scene with eyes that had seen a lot. Her gaze moved from Rachel on the stage to me kneeling with Tommy in my arms. Without waiting, she walked into the room. Her presence made everyone respect her immediately. "What is happening here?" she asked. Her voice was calm but had authority. Nobody spoke. The guests seemed to all hold their breath at the same time. Margaret walked over to us, kneeling beside me even though her expensive outfit might get dirty. "I'm Margaret Williams, Stephen's mother. Is your son hurt?" "Yes," I managed to say, still holding Tommy. "He hit his head when he fell." My sister pushed him off the stage. Margaret's face didn't change, but something in her eyes got harder. "I'm a family court judge," she said quietly. "I've seen too many children hurt by grown-ups who should protect them." She gently looked at the cut on Tommy's forehead. "This needs a doctor's help." Rachel finally found her voice, stepping down from the stage and walking toward us with Stephen following behind her, looking shocked. "Margaret, this isn't what it looks like," Rachel began, her voice too high. "We had a small family fight, and things got a little crazy." Margaret stood up, facing Rachel directly. "I saw what happened from the doorway, Rachel. You dragged this child by his hair, pushed him against a wall, and pushed him off a stage. Those are facts, not different ways of seeing things." Rachel got even more pale. "He's my nephew. It was just a family thing." "Hurting a child is never just a family thing," Margaret replied coolly. Karen rushed forward. "Margaret, you have to understand. Marcus caused this by refusing to help with a wedding emergency." Rachel was understandably upset. Margaret turned to my mom, her face showing disbelief. "Are you saying that refusing to give money means it's okay to hurt a child physically?" Karen stumbled over her words. "Well, no, but you have to understand the whole situation." "I do understand," Margaret agreed. "The situation here is that a bride hurt an 8-year-old boy at her own wedding party in front of hundreds of people who saw it." She turned to the crowd. "Is there a doctor here?" An older man stepped forward. "I'm Dr. Peterson, a general doctor. Would you please check this child?" Margaret asked. "I'm worried he might have a concussion." Dr. Peterson came over and kneeled beside us. He gently checked Tommy, looking at his eyes and asking him simple questions. "He probably has a mild concussion," he said after a few minutes. "The cut doesn't need stitches, but he should be watched carefully for the next day. I think you should take him to the emergency room to be safe." Margaret nodded. "Thank you, doctor." She turned to me. "I'll have my driver take you to the hospital right away." "This is crazy," Rachel interrupted. "It's just a bump on the head. Marcus is making this bigger than it is to ruin my wedding." Stephen finally spoke up, his voice tight with emotion. "Rachel, stop. I saw what you did. Everyone saw what you did." "Stephen," Rachel's voice turned begging. "You don't understand. She's been trying to mess up our wedding from the start." Margaret spoke to her son directly. "Stephen, I need to talk to you alone." As they stepped away, Rachel looked more and more panicked. She turned to Karen. "Mom, do something." Karen walked up to Margaret and Stephen, trying to join their conversation. "Margaret, I know this looks bad, but Rachel has been under so much stress planning this wedding." Margaret's answer was measured but firm. "Karen, stress doesn't excuse hurting a child. As a sitting family court judge, I can't and won't ignore what I saw with my own eyes. Meanwhile, Dr. Peterson had helped me get Tommy into a chair and was cleaning his wound with a first aid kit someone had gotten. "Is my son going to be okay?" I asked him quietly. "His body will heal, yes," he replied. "But something like this can affect kids emotionally. He should probably talk to a professional about what happened today." Tommy sat quietly, his crying now just occasional sniffles. "Dad, I want to go home," he whispered. "We're going to the hospital first, buddy," I explained gently, "to make sure your head is okay." Margaret came back to us, her face serious but kind. "My driver is waiting outside. He'll take you straight to Memorial Hospital. I've already called them. They're expecting you." "Thank you," I said, feeling overwhelmed by her kindness. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come." "I've spent my career protecting children," she replied simply. "Now, is there anything else you need before you go?" I looked at Rachel, who was now in a heated conversation with Stephen. Her face was red, and she was moving her hands wildly. Stephen looked more upset with each moment. "No," I decided. "We just need to leave." Margaret nodded. "I'll call you tomorrow. Here's my card with my personal phone number. I'd like to check on Tommy's condition." As Margaret helped us toward the exit, Karen made one last try to stop us. "Marcus, please don't make this bigger than it is. Rachel is sorry. Aren't you, Rachel?" Rachel, still arguing with Stephen, didn't even hear the question. Margaret fixed Karen with a steady look. "Karen, I suggest you focus on controlling the damage from your daughter's party instead of trying to make what she did seem small. This incident may have legal problems." Karen went pale. "Legal problems? But we're family." "Being family doesn't make anyone above the law," Margaret stated firmly, "especially when it comes to hurting children." As we got to the door, Margaret spoke quietly to me. "Marcus, I want you to know that what happened today was not your fault. No request for money, no matter how important someone thinks their event is, makes it okay to do what was done to your son." Her words broke something inside me, and tears filled my eyes. "Thank you for saying that." Margaret squeezed my shoulder gently. "Get Tommy the help he needs. I'll handle things here and call you tomorrow." As we walked out, I heard Margaret's voice behind us, speaking to the shocked wedding guests with calm authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, because of unfortunate things that happened, the party will end early. Please get your things and leave in an organized way." The fancy car waiting outside was so different from the emotional mess we were carrying with us. As we got comfortable in the back seat, Tommy leaned against me, his small body still shaking a little. "Why did Aunt Rachel hurt me, Dad?" he asked in a tiny voice that broke my heart. "Sometimes grown-ups do terrible things when they're angry," I answered, holding him close. "But that doesn't make it okay, and it wasn't your fault at all." As the car drove away from the venue, I looked back at the beautiful mansion where my sister's perfect day had fallen apart into a nightmare. Margaret stood on the steps, already on her phone, her face determined. In the middle of the worst day of my recent life, I felt a small bit of hope that someone powerful was on our side. The emergency room was thankfully not busy that evening. Tommy was seen right away. The staff responded to whatever Margaret had said in her call ahead. The doctor confirmed what Dr. Peterson had said: a mild concussion with no signs of more serious brain injury. They cleaned and bandaged the cut on his forehead and told us to watch him for the next day. As we waited for the final papers to leave, the full weight of what had happened crashed over me. My own sister had physically hurt my son. My mother had defended the attack. If Margaret hadn't stepped in, how far would it have gone? Guilt chewed at me. I should have protected Tommy better. Should have seen the warning signs. Should have left the wedding earlier. "It's not your fault, Dad," Tommy said suddenly, as if he could read my mind. Even though he was hurt, he was trying to comfort me. I squeezed his hand gently. "I'm so sorry this happened to you, Tommy." "I know," he replied simply. Then after a pause, "Grandma and Aunt Rachel were really mean today." The understatement almost made me laugh despite everything. "Yes, they were very mean." "Are they always going to be mean now?" he asked. I didn't have an answer for that. I honestly didn't know what our family would look like after today. We were getting ready to leave when Margaret appeared in the doorway of our examination room, still in her elegant wedding outfit, but looking remarkably calm considering everything. "I hope I'm not bothering you," she said. "I wanted to check on Tommy." "That's very kind of you," I replied, genuinely touched by her concern. She walked up to Tommy's bed with a warm smile. "Hello, Tommy. I'm Stephen's mother. How are you feeling?" "My head hurts," Tommy admitted, "but the doctor said I'll be okay." "I'm glad to hear that," Margaret said. "You were very brave today." Tommy looked at Margaret curiously. Why did Aunt Rachel get scared when you came in? Margaret glanced at me before answering carefully. I'm a judge who works with children who have been hurt. People who hurt children know that I take it very seriously. Tommy nodded, accepting this explanation. Margaret turned to me. The party ended shortly after you left. Stephen is devastated. He had no idea Rachel could do such a thing. What happens now? I asked. That depends partly on you, Margaret replied. As a judge, I saw a clear case of child assault. Normally, I would have to report it no matter what you wanted. But given the family relationship and Tommy's age, I wanted to talk about options with you first. What options do we have? Margaret explained the possibilities. Filing formal charges, which would likely result in Rachel facing assault charges, getting a restraining order without criminal charges, or handling it privately with strict rules for any future contact. Take some time to think about it, she advised. This isn't a decision to make tonight. Whatever you choose, I'll support you. Thank you, I said sincerely, for everything you've done already. Margaret smiled sadly. I've seen too many cases where family members excuse or allow abuse. I couldn't stand by and watch it happen. We spent the night at the hospital. The doctors wanted to watch Tommy's concussion symptoms. I slept badly in the chair beside his bed, waking up at every small sound. By morning, Tommy was feeling better, though the bruise on his forehead had gotten much darker. As we were getting ready to leave, there was a knock at the door. Stephen stood there looking exhausted and uncertain. May I come in? He asked hesitantly. I nodded, watching him carefully. Stephen walked up to Tommy's bed slowly. Hi, Tommy. I'm your Uncle Stephen. We didn't get to meet properly yesterday. Tommy looked at him warily but nodded. I wanted to say how sorry I am about what happened, Stephen continued. What Rachel did was wrong, and there's no excuse for it. Did you know she was going to hurt me? Tommy asked directly. Stephen shook his head strongly. No, I had no idea she could do something like that. If I had known, he stopped, then straightened his shoulders, I wouldn't have married her. The statement hung in the air between us. What happens now? I asked, repeating my question to Margaret. Stephen ran a hand through his messy hair. I don't know exactly. I've told Rachel she needs to get professional help right away, or I'll file for an annulment. And my mother? I couldn't help asking. Karen is still making excuses, Stephen admitted, saying Rachel was under stress, that you provoked her by refusing to help with the wedding. Margaret set her straight pretty firmly. Stephen looked genuinely confused. There was never actually a food emergency, was there? I explained the dinner meeting, the demand for $15,000, the claim that the original food company had backed out. Stephen's face shifted from confusion to shock to anger. There was no food crisis. We booked that company months ago and paid the deposit. They never backed out. Then what was the money for? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Rachel mentioned wanting to upgrade our honeymoon from first class to a private jet, Stephen said slowly. She said she was going to use her own savings, but I told her it wasn't necessary. He looked sick. She tried to get the money from you for that, and got your mother to lie about it. I nodded, the final piece clicking into place. And when I refused, they apparently told you I was just being difficult and jealous. Marcus, I'm so sorry, Stephen said, looking genuinely distressed. I had no idea any of this was happening. If I had known. It's not your fault, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. Stephen turned to Tommy again. Tommy, I want you to know that what your Aunt Rachel did was completely wrong. No grown-up should ever hurt a child, no matter what. And I promise you that she will face consequences for what she did. Tommy studied him for a moment, then nodded. Okay. I also want you both to know, Stephen continued, that I will personally pay all medical expenses from this incident, as well as any therapy Tommy might need. That's not necessary, I started to say. It is, Stephen insisted. I can't undo what happened, but I can at least make sure you don't suffer financially because of it. Before I could respond, he added, And Marcus, my mother told me about the college fund you've been saving for Tommy. That's admirable. I want to help with that too. Stephen, we've only just met, I protested. You don't owe us anything. I know, he agreed. But I want to do this. Please let me. His sincerity was impossible to doubt. I simply nodded, too overwhelmed to argue further. After Stephen left, promising to keep in touch, a nurse arrived with our discharge papers. As we got ready to leave the hospital, I thought about the decisions ahead. Would I press charges against my own sister? Could our family ever recover from this? What was the right thing to do for Tommy? With these questions weighing heavily, we headed home to begin the process of recovery and healing. The week after the wedding was strange. News of what happened spread quickly through our extended family and friend circles. Some people reached out with support, while others seemed to take sides or distance themselves from the drama entirely. Tommy recovered physically fairly quickly. The bruise on his forehead faded, and his concussion symptoms disappeared within days. The emotional impact, however, was more lasting. He had bad dreams about falling and being hurt. He grew anxious around loud voices or arguments. He asked repeatedly why his aunt and grandmother had been so mean. I arranged for him to see a child psychologist, a gentle man named Dr. Chun who specialized in trauma. Stephen, true to his word, covered the expenses without question. Margaret called daily to check on us and became an unexpected source of support. She had a wealth of knowledge about childhood trauma and recovery, and she never pressured me about legal decisions. Take the time you need, she advised. The legal options will still be there when you're ready to decide. Rachel sent a text message 5 days after the wedding. Sorry things got crazy. Hope Tommy is feeling better. The inadequacy of the apology was staggering. No acknowledgement of the assault, no real ownership of her actions, just a passive suggestion that things got crazy, as if by themselves. I didn't respond. My mother called repeatedly, leaving increasingly frustrated voicemails. Marcus, you need to talk to Rachel. She's devastated about what happened. This silent treatment isn't helping anyone heal. I don't understand why you're being so difficult about this. Families fight, but then they make up. Finally, I texted her. Mom, what Rachel did wasn't a fight. It was assault on a child. Until you and she acknowledge that reality, we have nothing to discuss. She didn't call again after that. A week after the incident, Margaret invited us to her home for lunch. Her house was elegant but comfortable, with bookshelves lining the walls and fresh flowers in every room. Stephen tells me Rachel has agreed to start therapy. Margaret informed me as we sat in her sunroom. Tommy was in another room playing with games Margaret had thoughtfully provided. Do you think it will help? I asked. Margaret considered the question carefully. That depends on whether she's going because she genuinely wants to change or just to make Stephen happy. Real change requires honest self-reflection. Have you spoken with her since the wedding? Briefly, Margaret admitted. She was defensive at first, but when I laid out the potential legal consequences in detail, she became more subdued. And Stephen is struggling, Margaret said frankly. He's seen a side of Rachel he never knew existed, and he's questioning everything about their relationship. I felt a pang of sympathy for him, caught in a nightmare not of his making. Marcus, Margaret continued, I've been thinking about your situation. If you'd be interested, I have a colleague who runs a non-profit legal advocacy center. They're looking for an operations coordinator. The pay is better than average, and the hours would work with Tommy's school schedule. I stared at her in surprise. You'd recommend me for a job? You barely know me. I know enough, she replied simply. I've seen how you prioritize your son's well-being, how you've handled this crisis with dignity despite the provocation. Those qualities are rare and valuable. The offer was unexpected but welcome. My current jobs were barely covering our expenses, and the better salary would allow me to quit the weekend work and spend more time with Tommy. Thank you, I said sincerely. I would be very interested. Margaret smiled. Excellent. I'll make the introduction. 3 weeks after the wedding, I finally made my decision about pressing charges. After consulting with Tommy's therapist and a family attorney Margaret recommended, I chose not to pursue criminal charges, but instead filed for a temporary restraining order against Rachel and set strict conditions for any future contact. The conditions were non-negotiable. Rachel would continue therapy for at least 1 year. She would write a proper apology letter taking full responsibility for her actions. She would have no contact with Tommy unless Tommy specifically requested it, and then only with supervision. Any violation would result in immediate legal action. Stephen supported these conditions fully and added financial consequences of his own. Rachel would not have access to their joint accounts until she demonstrated meaningful progress in therapy. Karen was initially outraged by the restraining order, calling it extreme and vindictive. But when Margaret calmly explained the alternative could have been criminal charges and public court proceedings, she fell silent. The new job at the Legal Advocacy Center was perfect for me. The work was meaningful, the environment supportive, and the schedule allowed me to be home when Tommy returned from school. My co-workers became friends, offering support and understanding as I navigated the aftermath of the wedding incident. Tommy continued therapy, gradually processing his trauma. Dr. Chun marveled at his resilience. "Children are remarkably adaptable," he told me during one of our parent consultations. "With consistent support and honest communication, they can recover from significant trauma." 6 months passed. We had settled into a new normal. Tommy was doing well in school again. His nightmares had decreased, and he was returning to his building projects with enthusiasm. The Legal Advocacy Center had promoted me to Senior Operations Coordinator after recognizing my organizational skills. One unexpected development was our continued relationship with Stephen and Margaret. Despite the circumstances of our meeting, they had become important figures in our lives. Stephen, who had filed for divorce after Rachel refused to complete her therapy program, often joined us for Sunday lunches at Margaret's home. "You two are the silver lining in this whole mess," he told me one afternoon as we watched Tommy and Margaret planting vegetables in the garden. "I lost a wife, but I gained a nephew and friend." The final confrontation with my mother came unexpectedly. She showed up at our apartment one evening, demanding to speak with me. "This has gone on long enough," she declared as she stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "You need to forgive your sister and move forward. Family is too important to throw away." I remained calm, a skill I'd been practicing in my own therapy sessions. "Mom, I agree that family is important. That's why I've been protecting my son from people who hurt him." "Rachel made one mistake," Karen exclaimed. "Hurting a child isn't a mistake," I countered. "It's a choice. And your choice to defend and excuse her behavior is just as concerning. So you're cutting us out of your lives forever? Is that your plan?" "No, Mom. My plan is to establish healthy boundaries and require accountability. When Rachel completes therapy and takes genuine responsibility for what she did, we can discuss supervised visits. If you can acknowledge that what happened was wrong and stop making excuses for it, you could see Tommy sooner." "This is ridiculous," Karen muttered. "In my day, families worked things out without all this therapy and legal nonsense. In your day, a lot of abuse was ignored and excused," I replied evenly. "I'm breaking that cycle for Tommy's sake." Karen left in anger, but I remained firm in my decision. The boundaries I had established weren't about punishment. They were about protection. That evening, as I tucked Tommy into bed, he asked a question that caught me off guard. "Dad, are you sad that Grandma and Aunt Rachel aren't in our lives anymore?" I considered my answer carefully. "I'm sad about the choices they made that led us here. I miss the relationship I wished we could have had. But I'm not sad about protecting you and creating a safer, healthier life for us." Tommy nodded thoughtfully. "Margaret says sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into." "Margaret is very wise," I agreed. "I think we chose a good family," Tommy declared, snuggling under his covers. "You and me and Margaret and Stephen." "I think we did too, buddy," I said, kissing his forehead where the bruise had once been. "I think we did too." The journey from that terrible wedding day to our current peace had been difficult, but transformative. I had discovered strength I never knew I possessed. I had learned to set boundaries without guilt and to recognize manipulation tactics for what they were. Most importantly, I had shown Tommy that love doesn't mean accepting mistreatment, that family should protect rather than harm, and that standing up for yourself isn't selfish but necessary. As our story spread through comments and shares, I received messages from others who had faced similar family betrayals. They thanked me for speaking out, for showing that it's possible to rebuild after family trauma. Their words reminded me that sharing our experiences can help others feel less alone in their struggles. So if you're watching this and facing your own family crisis, remember, true family protects, supports, and respects boundaries. Sometimes the hardest choice is the right one. Sometimes walking away is the only way forward. And sometimes when one door closes, better ones open to reveal the family you truly deserve. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your worth is not determined by those who fail to value you. This is Marcus from JAMAL'S Revenge, reminding you to protect yourself and those you love. Stay strong, stay safe, and never let anyone tell you that protecting your child is wrong. Until next time. Final closing music and channel outro. No narration, just soft background music fading out as the video ends with text overlays showing. JAMAL'S Revenge. Subscribe for more real stories. Your story could be next. Together we heal. The screen fades to black.